Ms. LaViolette, please take the stand. Yes, you may. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. You may proceed.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, Ms. LaViolette, we left off talking in May of 2007. I wanted to move forward to June of 2007.
All right.
All right. And at the time of, in the beginning of June of 2007, what's your understanding with regard to the relationship between Mr. Alexander and Jodi?
That relationship was still continuing and that they were still a couple.
All right. Let's talk about journal entry. And in part of your review of the case, did you look through Jodi's journals that she kept?
Yes, I did.
And specifically, did you look through the journals that she was keeping while she was dating Mr. Alexander?
Yes, I did.
And in one of those journals, did you look at one dated from June 5th of 2007?
I'm sure I did.
All right. Judge, may I approach? I'm handing with the mark of exhibit 564. Is that the article, or I'm sorry, not the article, but the journal from Ms. Arias' diary from June 5th of 2007?
Yes, yes,
And
it is.
do you need to review that prior to me asking you questions about it?
I think I'm fine with that.
You're good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So on June 5th, 2007, is there, after your review of this journal writing, what is your impression with regard to what Ms. Arias is writing about?
She's writing about her experience of Mr. Alexander and a testimony that he gave regarding eternal families, regarding his own father, and her just her admiration of him and what it meant to her to have someone who was so strong and so usually tough and jovial, to be so in touch with his heart, and that it touched her deeply, and that she realized one of the reasons that she was so deeply in love with him.
And does she talk about the two of them in a spiritual sense?
Yes, she talks about them, about feeling very close to him spiritually, that this touched her a lot, and then once again connected them in a spiritual way.
Okay. As part of the of this journal article, as part of this journal writing, does she also have any misgivings?
She says, well,
Your impressions.
my impressions are that she's begun to feel suspicious. There are things that have been happening. He's been flirtatious with women in front of her. She hasn't been introduced sometimes when they go out. And so there's this feeling that maybe something's going on that she's not aware of, that she's suspicious.
Okay. Does she speak to whether or not Mr. Alexander does anything to assuage her of his feelings?
Yes, that they talk and...
Question.
Sustained.
What does it say what are your impressions with regard to Mr. Alexander making her feel better?
that they both convey to each other how lucky they are to be with each other, that she feels lucky to be with him, and he reiterates to her how lucky he feels to be with her.
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
That he feels very lucky to be with her, and she thinks that's really great.
All right. Is there anything else that was, well, I guess let me ask you this. What's significant to you about this particular writing?
Well, once again, it's a time where she's feeling insecure and she's reassured, and they're bonded over the spirituality, which I think is really significant in this case, that they're both very attached to their faith, and she's attached to his role in that faith. So anytime that he does something that's impressive to her, that's about that spirituality. It connects them, as it would, I think, most anybody.
All right. Let's talk about June 10th. There's another journal writing from June 10th. Judge, may I approach?
I'm handing you what's been marked as Exhibit 566. That's the June 10th journal writing. Let me know if you'd like to review it first.
Right.
Okay, do you recall that journal writing?
Yes, I do.
All right, why don't you tell us, based on your impressions of reading through that journal, this particular entry, what's your impression of what is it about?
It's about a time that they go out for karaoke, and Miss Arias sings My Guy for Mr. Alexander, and how much he appreciates it, and how he praises her for her singing ability.
Just tell us your impressions of what it's about.
It's about her singing ability, and her using that singing ability to make an impression on Mr. Alexander, and that it does.
All right, and is this something where, is she writing about how good she feels with him?
Yes, about how special he makes her.
Sustained.
Because why?
Because he makes her,
Overruled.
because he makes her feel very special, and throughout this relationship, it's one of the things that she continues to say, is that he has made her feel more special than anybody in her life, and this is one more example of how he makes her feel special.
And what's significant about this writing for you?
I think pretty much what I just said was that feeling special for any of us, I think, is a really important thing. I think we get in relationship to feel special to somebody. And so feeling special is a connecting place in relationship.
Is that something that further bonds them together?
Yes.
And specifically with regard to Miss Arias, does it further bond her to Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
All right, I want to talk to you about, let's see, in June. At some point in June, does Miss Arias find out that Mr. Alexander was being unfaithful to her?
Yes, she does.
All right. And did you speak with Miss Arias about this?
Yes, I did.
What is it that you learned?
I learned that Miss Arias became suspicious, and she was confessing that she looked at his text messages. And when she looked at his text messages, she found numerous text messages that were sexual in content before they were dating and after they were dating, that about setting up future rendezvous with other women and about previous rendezvous with other women, and that it was crushing to her, and that they were planning a trip, and she didn't want that to ruin the trip, so she didn't bring it up right away. In addition to that, that she texted one of the women that was on this, or in this group, and texted that person and said, "Jodi cuddling with Travis," something to that regard. And she said she was kind of embarrassed that she had done that, but she did that sort of spontaneously.
And does she speak, we were just talking about one of her journal from June 5th to 2007, so just in the very beginning of June, is that where she's writing about her suspicions?
Yes.
And at some point after that, is that when she confirms it by looking at his text messages?
Yes, she does.
What does she do? Does she confront him right away?
No, she doesn't. She wants to have this trip. She wants to enjoy the trip, and she feels like that's really going to throw a monkey wrench into it, basically. And so she waits until after the trip to confront him.
Is there something special about trips between the two of them? Is there something that does something for the relationship when they go on trips?
They seem to do trips really well. They both tend to have a sense of adventure, it seems like. They both try new things. They love seeing new places, and it really connects them. So I think it's a strong point in their relationship.
So she decides to go forward with this trip, even though she knows about these text messages.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about some of that then. There was a journal writing from June 24th.
She's already given that to me.
I gave you June 24th?
Yes.
Oh, all right. What's the exhibit number on there?
What's that?
The green tag.
566.
Okay, so, all right, okay, but we haven't talked about it. So June 24th, she writes an article, a journal entry, and tell us what your impression is of that journal entry.
She's talking about the law of attraction.
All right?
And about that her impression of God is that
Are these your impressions?
yes,
Okay. May she continue, Judge?
that Heavenly Father wants her.
No, I would object.
Approach, please.
Lila, you were telling us that the subject matter of this particular journal was about the law of attraction and what else?
Basically, it was about the law of attraction and what that means to Miss Arias, to Jodi, that if you want good things to come into your life, you have to think good things, you have to imagine good things, and that you really can't think about bad things because that creates exactly what you don't want. So her belief is that the law of attraction means that she has to focus on what's good and what's positive, even if it means ignoring what's going on behind her back, which is hard for her to do because she knows that things are happening, and in order to focus on the positive, she has to ignore those things.
And is she talking about that, about the difficulty of ignoring things that are going on behind her back?
Yes.
And you said the law of attraction. Are you actually familiar with the law of attraction?
Yes, I am.
What do you know about it?
The law of attraction.
How do you know about the law of attraction?
I watched The Secret, and I watched another documentary film about the law of attraction.
Okay, so based on those two documentary films that you've watched with regard to the law of attraction, can you tell us what it is that you know?
The law of attraction basically states that if the energy you put out is what you bring in. So if you put out a lot of good energy, you bring good energy back to yourself. And it also implies that you have to go in the direction of that energy. So if you're thinking good thoughts, you also have to act on those good thoughts. And for some folks, it's clearly about thinking. If they think the right thing, then good things will happen. And I find that sort of thinking to an extreme in regard to the law of attraction.
All right. With regard to this journal entry, what is the significance to you about the way that Jodi speaks of the law of attraction and having to ignore things going on behind her back?
It actually negates, I think, in some ways that she's just a human being, because what it's basically, the way she's kind of taking it is that she doesn't have to be affected by what's going on around her, as if she just thinks right and if she just focuses on what's positive, then it'll turn out okay anyway. And so it almost negates the impact of one human being on another.
Does it account for what other human beings are doing to the person who's thinking of the law of attraction?
It pretty much says that you can create what you think, what you feel, what you believe, what you write down, that energy is going to change things.
And so if at the time Jodi is aware that Mr. Alexander is being unfaithful to her, pursuant to the law of attraction, does she need to ignore that?
She needs to focus on the outcome, what she wants to have happen at the end, as opposed to what's happening right now. So what's my picture kind of for the future as opposed to what's happening right now.
All right. And in your experience in dealing with relationships and abusive relationships, can this be a problem?
Oh yeah, it can be a real problem, because basically you can't change somebody else unless they're agreeing with you. So if somebody wants to change, that's really helpful. If they don't want to change, I have yet to find the person that can change them.
All right. Just by positive thinking.
Right.
Now, during this time in June, were they on a trip together?
Yes.
And during this trip together, what happens with their relationship while they're on a trip together?
They get closer. They enjoy themselves. It's a bonding experience. It's just the two of them together. So it's connecting.
Okay. Now, at the end of June, what happens with their relationship?
At the end of June, Miss Arias, Jodi brings up what she's found, and they allegedly break up.
Well, let me stop you. Why do you say allegedly? Well, why do you say allegedly?
Because they continue to be together in action. And Mr. Alexander apologizes and gives her gifts. And so despite the fact that they're broken up, they really continue to see each other. It's just more secretive now.
And did the contact there, did they continue to have contact even though if they break up at the end of June, are they continuing to have contact?
Yes, they're continuing.
Sustained.
Did you speak to Jodi about this?
Yes,
And did she talk to you about when she broke up with Mr. Alexander?
yes, at the end of June.
Okay. And did she talk to you about whether or not he continued to have contact with her even though she broke up with him?
Yes, they continued to have regular contact.
And was that, did she talk to you about whether or not it was Mr. Alexander who continued the contact?
She said that Mr. Alexander continued to call her.
Hearsay.
What, I'm sorry, what did you say?
That Mr. Alexander continued to call her and that they continued to have contact.
All right, and that was even the day after they broke up?
I believe it was.
I'm sorry, what?
I believe it was.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about into July of 2007. So we know, okay, allegedly they've broken up. Is there a point where Miss Arias moves? Well, and let me stop you. From the time they met, to the time, the end of June, were they living in separate cities?
Yes, they were living in separate states.
Okay. Oh, in separate states, right. And after they broke up, is there a time where, what was Mr. Alexander doing after she breaks up with him, as far as the relationship was concerned?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, was Mr. Alexander attempting to reestablish the relationship?
They were in contact with each other.
Okay. And so, within contact with each other, are you aware of whether or not Miss Arias ended up moving?
She moved to Mesa in, I believe, July
Okay. Of 2007?
in 2007.
All right. And so once she moves to Mesa in 2007, now they're not living together, right?
No, they're not.
So now that would make them in the same city?
Yes.
All right. Just may approach.
Okay, you exhibit 567, what's marked as 567.
That's a journal entry from July 25th of 2007 from Miss Arias. Do you need to review that?
Yes.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
All right. What is your impression after reviewing the email? And obviously you've reviewed it before today, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. What is your impression with regard to the subject matter of the journal entry on July 25th of 2007?
It has to do with trust.
Okay.
And basically that Miss Arias, Jodi, is saying,
You're not about to tell us what she's exactly saying, right?
no,
Okay, is this your impression?
this is my impression,
Okay, may she continue, Judge?
that they violate each other's trust. Her violation is in looking at his text messages. His violation is in continuing to see other women. She says,
Sustained.
Do you want to use another word than says?
I need a thesaurus, I think. I keep saying say, and I know I'm not supposed to say. Okay, my impression basically is that there's a lack of trust and a lack of any foundation for trust, and that Mr. Alexander's providing no reason for her to trust in this situation, and that she basically shouldn't have to be worried that someone she loves is acting in a way that is distressful.
Does she talk about how she feels about herself?
Yeah, she basically feels stupid and really blaming herself for being blind and stupid in this situation.
All right. This is the end of July, so this is right when she moves to Mesa. Is that about right?
I'm not sure exactly when in July she moves, but it's toward that time, sure.
Okay. what is significant to you about this particular journal entry?
The significance for me is that she's feeling very insecure about the relationship, but she isn't out of it, she's still in it. And that she feels like she can end this violation, that she can end her part of it by not checking his emails, or his texts, but she's not sure that he can provide that comfort for her. And so there's a lot of self-blame in this, and I think that's really important, that she's blaming herself for staying in the relationship. And you see that type of self-blame a lot when you're working with victims of domestic violence, where they really start to wonder what's wrong with them that they're sticking with it.
So do you mean that they're blaming themselves for the problems?
They're blaming themselves for the problem. They're blaming themselves for not doing anything about the problem.
Does that tie in at all to her belief in the law of attraction?
Yes, I think the law of attraction sort of collides with the self-blame. It's much easier to blame yourself if you think you can change things by the way you think and the way you write in your journal and the way you feel.
Okay. Back when they first met, that weekend that they met in Las Vegas, you talked about all the things that Jodi learned about Mr. Alexander just in that weekend, about who he was in the community, that type of thing. And can you tell us what were some of the things that she learned that weekend about him, about what the community would think of him?
She learned that he was a priesthood holder in the Mormon church, which stresses family values, and she was very impressed by that. She learned that he was a major player in PPL, the organization that he worked for, and that he was one of the people invited to the executive director's banquet. So there was an appearance of financial stability with that. She learned that he was persistent, and she liked that.
All right. And with regard to the financial stability, is that something that, in your review of the case, is that something that Mr. Alexander put forth to other people, his financial success?
Yes, he did.
And is that how he portrayed himself to other people?
Yes, he did.
All right. Judge May I approach?
I'm handing you what's been marked as Exhibit 568.
Is that an email?
Yes, it is.
And when is it dated?
It's dated July 27th
Of 2000.
of 2007.
All right. And who's it from?
It's from Sky Hughes.
And who's it to?
It's to Mr. Alexander.
And what is your impression of the subject matter of this particular email?
Her apology for not being able to loan him $4,000.
All right. And is she still able to loan him some money?
Yes, she's able to.
Possession, hearsay.
Sustained.
Is she, based on your impressions of the email, is she able to give him some money?
Objection, relevance, hearsay.
Sustained.
Ms. LaViolette, based on your review of this case and other emails and text messages, are you aware of Mr. Alexander asking other people for money?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. You may answer yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you about a baseball game. Did Miss Arias ever talk to you about when she went to a baseball game in July of 2007?
Yes, she did.
And can you tell us about that?
Miss Arias went with her friends.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
May we approach?
You may continue.
All right, we were talking about a baseball game that you spoke to Miss Arias about. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So could you tell us what you know about this baseball game after speaking with Miss Arias?
She attended, or she was going to attend a game with some of her friends, and it happened to be on the night of Mr. Alexander's birthday. He called her and basically asked her to,
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
After he calls her, does he have a conversation with Miss Arias?
yes, he does.
All right. And is she on the way to the game, or is she at the game? Do you know?
They're walking toward the D-back stadium.
Okay. And when after she has this conversation, what is the subject matter of the conversation?
The subject matter is why she hasn't planned anything to do with,
Overruled.
why she hasn't basically planned to spend time with him on his birthday, and that he would like that to happen.
Objection, hearsay, speculation.
Overruled. That answer may stand. Next question.
All right. And to your knowledge, based on what Miss Arias tells you, had they made any prior plans for his birthday?
No, they had not.
And was she in planning to attend the Diamondbacks game?
Yes, she was.
All right, and she gets this phone call from Mr. Alexander, and is he guilting her?
Yes.
After this conversation, what does Miss Arias do?
Miss Arias leaves, but prior to leaving, she asked Mr. Alexander to come pick her up from the game since he wants her to spend time with him. He refuses, and her friend, Rachel, takes her back to Mr. Alexander's house where she makes him a cake for his birthday, and they spend the evening together.
All right, so her friend Rachel takes her all the way back to Mesa where Mr. Alexander lives?
Yes,
From the Diamondback Stadium?
yes,
And then she spends the evening with Mr. Alexander for his birthday?
yes.
All right. What about this, if anything, is significant to you?
Well, the use of guilt, the use of control to sort of manipulate her into doing what he wants her to do. The fact that they don't have plans, that they allegedly don't have a relationship, aren't an official couple, but are still behaving, and he's still making the demands that someone would make on somebody that they're in a relationship with.
Testimony demands.
Is that how you review? You used the word demands. Is that how you took the information from Miss Arias that Mr. Alexander was making demands upon her?
I think not you better be here, but more subtle demands.
Okay. And we talked about subtlety in the beginning when you first testified about, I know we talked about subtlety when it comes to emotional abuse. And now we're talking about manipulation, the use of guilt, manipulation. Is this something that you would consider as subtle?
It is subtle.
Okay.
It's not as direct.
All right. What about the fact that it's Miss Arias who ultimately decides to go back to spend the night with or to spend the evening with Mr. Alexander? I mean, isn't that her fault?
Well, it would be her choice, but there's a real power difference in this relationship. And the power difference is that she apparently cares more than he does at this point. And I think, I don't know anyone who hasn't been in a relationship where they cared more than somebody else at one point in their lives. And when that happens, there is a real power difference that people with less power tend to try to do whatever they can to bring that relationship together. And
Let me stop you there for a second, sorry.
Okay.
But when you talk about people with less power, are you referring to Jodi then?
I am.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That Jodi cares at this point more than Mr. Alexander, and so there's a real...
Mr. Alexander's state of mind.
Is this based on, are you talking about based on your expert opinion with regard to seeing numerous couples, thousands of people over the years that you've practiced? Have you seen power differentials in that time?
I have, and I have lots of friends.
Okay.
I have lots of people that I know.
All right. And when you talk about power differentials, why is that important when we're looking at a progression of a relationship to decide whether or not it ultimately ends up to be abusive?
Because abusive relationships ultimately become unbalanced in power. They may not start out that way, they may start out that way, but they ultimately come to a place where one person has more power than the other person.
All right. Do you see this as an example in the Diamondbacks game?
Yes, I'm not calling that abuse, I'm just calling
Right.
that a difference in power.
Okay. And the difference in power, when there's a difference in power, when the person who has the less power in the relationship, do they always feel like they have a choice in choosing to say, no, I'm not going to spend the night with you?
No, they often don't feel that they have a choice
Why is that?
because they want something and they feel that they have to go kind of the extra mile to get it. And in some ways maybe feel like their back's against the wall about it, but they don't often feel like they have a choice because they want something and they're more focused on moving that relationship closer together than they are on looking at at their ultimate choices.
Okay. And when you say they want something, are you talking about the relationship that they want?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's talk about August 2nd of 2007.
Just, can we apply for that same month?
We're going to take the afternoon recess a little early. Please be back in the designated area at 2:35. Please remember the admonition, you are excused.
Please stand for the jury.
Record will show the jury has left the courtroom. You may step down. We are at recess.